Welcome to this Times Techies webinar. I am Sujit John, and I have with me my colleague Shilpa Fadnis. The two of us will moderate the discussion. We hope you and your families are staying safe and doing well. Our discussion today is on reimagining cloud strategy in the new normal, and the discussion is in association with Capgemini. Almost every organization is thinking cloud today since the pandemic, which forced the work from home environment and led to a surge in online transactions. Cloud has become probably the biggest buzzword in technology. Cloud makes distributed work easier. It enables almost infinite scaling. Cloud is enabling new business models and at costs that are far lower than with traditional IT infrastructure. To talk about how to design and implement a great cloud strategy, we have with us three outstanding professionals today. We have with us Indu Malhotra. Indu is the Vice President of Cloud Operations at Capgemini in India. She heads the cloud operations for over 100 global cloud customers across industry verticals. She's a relentless cloud and technology evangelist focused on creating unique solutions for customers. Prior to joining Capgemini, she was responsible for cloud strategy and setting up the global cloud delivery and operations at TCS. Welcome, Indu.
We have Neelam Gupta. Neelam is Vice President for Group Portfolio at Capgemini in India. She has 22 years of experience in account management, pre-sales, incubating and growing niche technology centers of excellence. She has industry experience in energy, utilities, securities, retail, life sciences, and has led several large cloud transformation programs for global customers. Welcome, Neelam.
Pleasure to be here.
Thank you, Neelam. And we have Mr. Raj Shekhar Joshi. Mr. Joshi is the head of Global Technology Transformation and Information Security at Aditya Birla Group. He's a computer science graduate from IIT Roorkee and has held several corporate leadership positions in India and abroad. He has been an entrepreneur, has led several businesses in software services, manufacturing, publishing, education, and in telecom in a career spanning over 30 years. Welcome, Mr. Joshi.
Thank you.
Thank you. Those of you viewing this can send in questions through the Facebook comment box. Sujit and I will put them to Indu, Neelam, and Mr. Joshi. Let me start with you, Indu. During the pandemic, several companies have accelerated their adoption of cloud. Can you take us through the kind of adoption that you've seen in India and global markets?
So cloud has been there since 2010, right? It's not something new. And cloud computing started and gaining huge momentum in the last decade. Even before the pandemic in 2019, the expected spend on cloud was $230 billion US. And they were expecting a growth of year on year of 20%. With the ability to reduce system build times from days to hours, and the investment is completely worth it. Now, the relevance of cloud computing has significantly increased due to a lot of factors. And I'll just list down a few. So first, of course, is the digital explosion. There has been hyper-personalization of services resulting in huge amount of data to understand end user behaviors and purchasing patterns. This in combination with certain variations like offers, promotions, create a huge significant peaks and troughs on the enterprise system. And therefore, customers are forced to come up with new offerings and go-to-market strategy. Now, cloud provides exact amount of agility and elasticity to meet these requirements. The second, of course, is the rate of business change. There has been so much of flux in the market. There have been so many divestitures and mergers and acquisitions, predominantly to meet either the operational costs or new operating models and business models. And cloud gives us the ability to scale, which is setting up new environments and scaling down or scaling out environments on a need basis. So that's the agility that it provides. The last but not the least is what I call the pandemic globalization. So even before pandemic, there was a lot of globalization initiatives which led to hyper connectivity of people across the globe. However, pandemic has now disrupted this complete cycle and it has been accelerated and become a default option. Hence, we now can be in part of any world and connect with anyone in the world. This requires robust and always available systems for collaboration, which is provided by cloud platform. At the same time, pandemic has put a lot of pressure, even from a business standpoint, right? And therefore, customers are very conscious and want to plan any of their heavy investments, especially on data center, on-premise data centers and license. which means this is the right time for having the cloud strategy in place. So a lot of enterprises approached cloud adoption even before the pandemic, right? So they looked at SaaS incorporation like Teams, ServiceNow, Salesforce, and that is the easiest way to move to cloud. And then next, of course, is developing applications on cloud native and moving the legacy applications and leveraging aspects like microservices and containerization. The pandemic has illustrated the strength of cloud computing as more companies are continuing to move their employees to cloud-based applications like Teams and so on to enable working from home seamlessly. Also, the pandemic has provided live case studies and highlighted the importance and benefits of cloud computing. The pandemic has taught us that on-premise infrastructure can no longer provide the same level of agility and availability which is offered by cloud. Therefore, today business leaders are all the more convinced that this is a business enabler. Cloud is here to stay, and the cloud adoption has hit another growth spurt where companies are looking at mixing and matching cloud services into solutions that address almost any business need. So you could have some environment on the on-premise and private cloud, extend it to public cloud, and have a good cocktail or a mixture of software pay as you go services over internet, and converge all of these services to meet exponential application and business needs. That's the significant mind shift change. We no longer have to convince anybody about cloud. The pandemic has proven to the entire business community that cloud is required, and that is going to be an essential business enabler.
So, in the last 1 year, your life and Neelam's life really become a lot more busy, is it?
Absolutely. It's become much more busier. I think it's also become very seamless, right? We always used to talk about the work-life balance, but now it's work-life integration. And that's thanks to all of these collaboration platforms and the seamless use of all of these tools across mostly cloud platforms.
Okay. So you can see a distinct difference between what's happening in the last 1.5 years versus the period before that. Can you?
Absolutely. I think now the cloud story is no longer about convincing the customers.
No, it's not.
Customers just want to understand how to use cloud in their respective environment, right?
Okay.
So it's no longer about talking about how cloud can be used. That's the only story. It's no longer about why cloud should be used.
Okay. Coming to Neelam and Raj, how is cloud enabling innovation that would not have been possible otherwise? Raj, it'll be particularly interesting to hear from you the kind of things that you have done in Aditya Birla Group. But before that, Neelam, you want to take that?
Sure. So as people say, the innovation is always thrives in the time of crisis, and the pandemic has actually really shown that. And even the previous crisis, whether it is a financial crisis of 2008 or any other, even the natural calamities as well. So every time that you will see the innovation, like new and newer ideas will come up. So pandemic has really shown that, and a lot of the new business models we have seen leveraging cloud. So I'll give you one example of the drone manufacturing company in US with Zipline. They manufacture drone, and they actually, when the social distancing norms to be followed and drone delivery was really identified as the method of the delivering all the essentials, even the medicine and medicare. So in the 6 months into the pandemic, they approximately delivered like 100,000 of packets, the medicines and all, to the hospitals and others, and which was like more than the previous 3 years of their business. And it didn't stop there. So there were like even the rules and regulations, emergency approval of them flying over the controlled airspace, flying in the night, which would not have been possible if it was not the crisis situation. So there are many more examples like that, whether it is a delivery or the e-commerce as an adoption for a very small to even medium business who were never online, they have adopted it quickly. So either it was more of a matter of survival than anything else. If you adopt, otherwise you face the extinction. So that's how it is.
So it's the ease of use and the scalability in some sense, is it?
Correct.
Okay. Raj?
Yeah, so I think, Sujit, you're able to hear me well?
Yeah, very well.
Okay. Yeah, as one of the panelists just now said, the crisis is harbinger to mega changes. When in 2003 there was a SARS outbreak mostly in the East Asia, e-commerce took a big leap at that time, because in China especially, people could not go. So that was the reason why Alibaba really soared at that time, and so on and so forth. So, and of course for us, though it's almost like 16 months back, but it looks like to be a little, a little while in 16 months back behind. But still, it's been a very, we had to do something. See, let me also introduce about the Aditya Birla Group. I think we are a group with presence in manufacturing businesses and services businesses. And hence, all the different companies are at various stages of their IT maturity or IT, strengths or IT skills, and so on and so forth. So for many of the companies, working from remote environments was not really a culture at that time, which is there. So we had to overnight almost put, around 30,000 people onto the cloud environment, O365, especially Microsoft. And so those are the challenges which we faced at that time, and the amount of digital transformation which we would have, taken a long time to come. It actually happened in a very short, period. It was out of really necessity, which is there. So I think that's there. And apart from that, of course, after that, most of the companies went big into cloud and various stages of the journey. Some of the companies have been born in cloud, like Applause Entertainment, some like Swiss Singapore, which is a trading business, and so on. I think, and also companies which are in mining businesses, as traditional as mining as it could be, they moved their, the entire the ERP operations to cloud. So there has been a lot of success stories within the group itself. We set up, we run an NGO called Empower, which provides mental health, advice or a helpline to people. And we set up the call center on the cloud flat within 7 days, which we would not have been able to do in the real world environment. So I think constraints, challenges, and the need of the hour played great role in motivating and driving the organizations to a lot of changes at that time.
Okay. Applause and all you could not have done it in the traditional way, is it?
Well, Applause had been there before also. So that was not really the time of crisis where Applause went there. It was a born in the cloud company. And when it began, the whole vision was that it will be modern in every outlook. And I think being new company, relatively new company in the group, they had that, I would say the convenience and the luxury of being born in the cloud. So they operate completely in the cloud, Amazon Web Services.
And what's your experience in terms of costs? I mean, what is it? I mean, has it helped bring down costs in some sense, or total cost of ownership?
Well, they see often in cloud, people feel that, oh, it's you move to cloud, it's like cheaper, you pay on the go. But there are many factors companies have to consider, because you already spent money on your on-premise infrastructure. So you have to see that you just really can't leave that investment away, which is there. And apart from that, cloud is not exactly cheap as it would be, especially the enterprise scale. For example, let me put security into perspective. People feel that when you go to cloud, it's like secure automatically, but that's not the case. When you buy infrastructure, you have to really look at, buying security, backups, and so on and so forth. And also, for example, just last week itself, we went on cloud. We bought a cloud security posture management product from a company called Zscaler. Now, these are the certain kind of investments you have to do, because you will often find that, if you see that most of the, many of the security breaches which have happened in the last 1 year have happened because of misconfigurations in the cloud, wrong configurations in the cloud, like Equifax itself or Kaseya had many more other issues, so on and so forth. So there is a security consideration when it comes to enterprises. And so it's not exactly cheap. So I think cloud should not be seen from the perspective of saving cost. I think that's a very narrow way to look at it. It's a way to, it's a change in the way you do business, because you can launch your products very quickly. Our financial services companies, for example, or retail companies are able to do their design collaborations very quickly, able to build products to market. I think that's very important. The mindset changes brings into people. We had some security challenges, and that, after that security challenges, we thought, okay, let's move to cloud. So we moved Again, I think everything which we have been doing has been a bit of a scale. We moved 40,000 people to O365 in a matter of around 2 weeks, which is there. So I think that makes people think, oh, it's like, it's a major change. So I think cloud should not be seen from the point of cost. Security is an angle, then way of working changes. There's a whole business model change. And I think more than that, if you to really take benefit, it's like it requires a culture change in the organization.
Okay. Since Raj brought in the security aspect, we thought we'll bring it in later. But Neelam and Indu, the cloud providers, the AWSs, the Googles, Microsoft, they will say they have the best of security. They will tell you that they can secure your things better than what you can do yourself. And yet Raj says security, and I've heard this from others as well, security is a big concern in the cloud. So what does it mean in terms of security in the cloud? Yeah.
Sujit, before you ask them and they answer,
okay.
Because
sure.
It's not the question of security in the cloud is not the right thing. It's a question of just moving to cloud is not good enough to think that I'm secure.
Okay.
You need to really look at your security posture by those tools, even maybe from cloud providers itself. But sometimes you have to look at from other companies too. So it's not just moving to cloud and I'm secure. You have to do more than that.
Got it. Okay. Indu, Neelam?
Absolutely, I agree with Raj. Security is a key element, right? And it has always been a key element as part of any deployments, transformations that we do. Any digital transformation, security has to play a vital role. And Raj is absolutely right. There's always an assumption that since there are multiple offerings that cloud has, which includes security, by the way, it is assumed that it is going to be part of the package, but you have to select the offering, consciously make it part of your solution and design and implement it, and only then it becomes inherent part of your service which you will deliver. That's part one. Second, also I think it's about a mindset change, because when we were in the on-premise world in the data center, so it's almost a fort, right, wherein not just physically you would have a data center, but even from a network architecture perspective, you would have firewalls, and everything would be just routed through that particular controlled environment itself. And so the application developers are used to that secure way of secure environment where you can just deploy your applications, and your applications themselves could have some vulnerabilities. They may expose certain ports to the internet, etc., which now in the cloud world you have to become much more conscious and aware. So you move away from a hardware or a software based approach towards security to more policy driven security, which is implemented through the tools available. And as Raj was talking about, it's not just the inherent cloud native tools, but also you might have to invest on a third party tool to have much more robust security. The other aspect, which is the agile methodology and the entire development lifecycle, which has become very, very rapid. And therefore, you have CI/CD pipelines wherein you are developing features and bringing them at a pace, like never before. Earlier, you would take months for deployment, but now you do 10 deployments a day without batting an eyelid. But that also means we have to get the right security practices. So what we call as DevSecOps. So embed the security right at the design stage, and the right security testing to be done before the releases are done. So it's a complete organization change management, especially in the IT world, to kind of secure our cloud applications, both in the cloud world and to some extent leverage the third party security tools to make it much more stronger and robust.
Okay. When you say policy driven, what exactly do you mean?
So when I say policy driven, so for example, you would have to disable certain ports, right? So these were the rules that used to define on a traditional, let's say, firewall in an on-premise world. Now this has to be policy driven so that it is implemented uniformly across an AWS or an Azure or a GCP platform. So that's where the policy-driven architecture comes into place, which then has to be implemented through a software-driven methodology of automated provisioning and so on. So, apply all the cloud principles, but it has to be aligned to a particular policy, which is defined at the as per the security standards.
Okay. Neelam, you wanted to say something?
I agree with Indu and Raj. It's entire the cultural shift, the change management aspect of it, the way that the developer used to code, the way on-prem, and the shift to cloud. There are a lot of the practices right from the design to development to testing, all has to embed. So the cloud provider can do this much, and they will clearly put all of those disclaimer, and you have to really read to the fine prints and then make your own. Make your own process and policies around it.
Okay, okay. For a startup and all, how easy is it to do all this?
It doesn't really matter whether it is a startup or the big organizations. Still the adoption and the usage of the cloud will still follow the same principles in terms of what your need is. Okay. What kind of data are you really saving? What kind of regulatory compliance that you need to comply with, that where the data need to be residing. Though it will, a lot of the policies and the decisions will actually be driven by these requirements.
Okay, okay. Interesting. In the early days of cloud, I kind of imagined that, okay, a few clicks and use cloud and everything is fine. But obviously, it's not as simple as that. Shilpa?
Yeah. Maybe to Neelam and Raj, Indu can chime in as well. How important is it to have a multi-cloud environment? And if you can talk about what are some of the best practices in a multi-cloud world?
Who wants to go first? Multi-cloud. Raj, are you using multiple clouds? You must be.
Well, I think, I think that's where the first thing is that multi-cloud can mean different things to different people, actually. So when you say multi-cloud, it could be one at the vendor portfolio management level. That I need to, for example, we work closely with Microsoft Azure and Amazon, and purposefully, it's like a two-and-box approach. You need to have two providers, and so on. And of course, it depends on actually a lot on the kind of capabilities you're looking at, but though they are not converging, earlier Google had strength, like for example, it had native TensorFlow and Kubernetes. Amazon had, its own strong data science and large data management tools. Microsoft had its own tools, but it's converging. So it's more, so one is, I think, the vendor portfolio management piece, which is there. And you won't find that, okay, the same application has, workload which is mixed across two clouds. We really don't see that happening. It doesn't make sense really to do that, which is there. But of course, it depends on geographical distribution also. If you have an operations across multiple cities and countries, for example, you might go for different clouds, which is there. There's an overhead of connectivity. So it's a simple equation of trade-off, whether the benefits far outweigh that or not. So I think that's what multi-cloud is. I hope you're not mixing with hybrid cloud, which is a different thing than altogether.
Okay, that's data center and in on-premise and cloud and all that is what hybrid.
Of cloud management platforms, and how do you look at visibility of costs across visibility of costs across two clouds. But primarily it depends on what you mean it. You really don't find one application split across two clouds. Two cloud environments different.
Okay, just to stick to multi-cloud, I mean, so does it also give you bargaining power to have multiple vendors? If they are all becoming kind of similar now, it would still make it worth your while to have multiple vendors, is it?
Yeah, I think it is worth while, especially for large companies or groups like us, because even if their offerings are similar, the way they structure their deals, the way their enterprise account management teams deal with you, the way they provide extra benefits. For example, we work with some of the providers very closely. They help in skilling our people also, and so on and so forth. So I think there are many benefits because. And Google has recently come out in a big way strongly, especially after Thomas Kurian took over from Dan Green. They've been far more aggressive with all the Google skills. Oracle is also in the game. Oracle has advantage because it's its own database. When it has its database, it's easier for them to do. So I think there are nuances across different cloud providers. But of course, I think it certainly makes sense to have multiple cloud providers dealing with you. It always makes sense, because in some of the cases, I will not, of course, take the name, but there have been a lot of concerns in the US on the egress charges, what they call as egress charges, that if you are in cloud, you're all happy, but when you want to go out of it, it's never easy.
Okay. So then if you have two vendors, then what's the advantage? you can.
No, two vendors, since you're dealing with two companies, they're all, see, for example, if you have a Microsoft ecosystem with you, then Azure makes a natural fit to you.
Right.
Large scale data, for example, our group data and analytics platform is on AWS. And but many of our, a lot of ERPs are on AWS. But at the same time, applications related to O365 are on Microsoft Azure. So that's where it is. I think you look at these kind of nuances. But for example, I have consciously tried always to do that. We are keeping 2-3, relationships going at one time.
Okay. Okay.
Maybe it's not, doesn't make sense for smaller company to do that, but large company.
Neelam?
Just, I agree with what Raj said. Just one point to add here is that many a times the driver for the multi-cloud is with the notion of don't put all your eggs in one basket. So you have the resiliency and backup as if something goes wrong, or even if some relationship doesn't go that well, then you always have you're not really dependent on just one vendor. So that is one particular reason that many customers go for it. And there is a second thing is more on the services. Some are matured in one particular service than the others, and who launches the first. Basically, all catch up in some point in time, but it depends on what your need is and which cloud provider is more mature in that service. So you have the best to choose from. So these are the two reasons what I have seen many customers really go for multi-cloud.
Okay.
But I agree, the large organization, many large organization, you will find at least two.
At least two.
If not more, yeah.
Okay. I guess in your case, you must be also advising them, right? Which to choose and all that.
Yes. So there is a whole portfolio of advisory services as well. So it depends on what stage the cloud adoption the company is, depending on what your priorities are, what your constraints are. So we do look at the entire landscape and then do a kind of assessment and advisory as well, that which workload should be suitable for which cloud, whether it will be benefited financially or the business perspective. So yes, that is part of the portfolio services that we do.
Also depends on whether that vendor has a data center in India and all that kind of things.
Correct. So it depends on the again the any compliance related requirements. If data need to be really residing in a particular region or country, and that will be the one of the decision factors from the many.
Smaller companies, as Raj was saying, may not make sense. Is that so? I mean, for smaller companies, might just go or startups and all that. Best to just go with the single vendor or what?
If there is a if there is a really the good package deal in terms of the meeting the requirement in terms of the services that is needed to run the business along with the financials, then yes. But otherwise, there's no really restriction, or there is no as such the guidance that okay, they must go with one only. You will find even the smaller companies also adopting more than one. Yeah.
Okay.
But these are the two key factors: the cost and the services that they want to leverage.
Okay. Okay. Indu, did you want to add something to that?
So yes, so the slightly different point of view on this. So while for small organizations, typically what I've seen in my experience, go with a single cloud, because the trade-off of managing and standardizing across multi-cloud is not does not give them the right let's say return on investment of having multiple clouds, because it's not just about setting up a cloud, but it's also having the right ecosystem. We talked about security. There are other aspects like standardizing and observability and control and other parameters that need to be considered. So typically in my experience, I see smaller enterprises go with one single cloud. They experiment based on what their core competencies are. They would like to select the offerings with whichever is a suitable provider, AWS, Azure, or GCP, and so on. At the same time, we have large enterprises who typically, the whole vendor management aspect of dealing with multiple providers at the same time, not having the fear of lock-in with one single provider, has made them choose multiple cloud providers. But having said that, they are also very conscious. So they would choose, let's say for infrastructure as a service, they would choose Azure. They would have other aspects like IoT and analytics on AWS, they could have their databases continue to be on Oracle. So there is a conscious move to at least have one set of services being delivered by a single provider so that they can minimize this entire overhead of multi-cloud management.
Okay, but suppose I know Azure very well. How easy is it to shift to an AWS or a GCP?
It depends on what services you're consuming, right? So if it is infrastructure as a service, which is pure VMs, I think movement is not that difficult. It's fairly reasonably seamless to move from one environment to another. But if you have invested heavily in developing applications on that particular hyperscaler provider, whether it's AWS, Azure, or GCP, then it is going to be a greenfield. You'll have to develop that from scratch in the other environment. So it depends on what services you're consuming and what you plan to migrate. And that's where containers become an interesting platform, because that gives you the flexibility to move from one provider to another without having the notion of lock-in.
That's one of your platforms, is it?
No, containers is
containers. You said, sorry. Got it.
Of application gives you that kind of flexibility.
Yeah. Shilpa?
Yeah, we have some audience questions coming in. This is from Santosh Mohanan. Building on Mr. Joshi's point that cloud isn't always cheap, how can SMEs leverage cloud with meager budgets? So you want to take it up?
Yeah, so I think, see, cheap is a relative motion actually. If you are, if you're already spending your money on-premise and you feel, oh, I want to make my, spend less and go to cloud, it's not necessarily always at the enterprise level and so on and so forth, because the considerations of the enterprise are very different. Small SME may have they are relatively better packages, they're relatively good deals, and they're starting small. Their security considerations often they are lesser. So I think it's more of that, how you define cheap to be. It's always a relative terminology to use cheap. And there are small companies who could just go to Amazon, use their, or Microsoft and use them some special offerings and just go on the cloud very quickly. And their security considerations are lesser, and so on and so forth. So I think it's of course cheap in that, rather than setting up, buying a lot of expensive PCs or expensive servers and getting stuck with it. So I think it's relatively contextual in that sense.
Okay. I have this question from Soham Bhaduri. How has cloud changed digital marketing? How has cloud changed digital marketing? Who wants to take that? Indu? Neelam? Yeah.
So when you talk about the digital marketing, you're actually dealing with the marketing. Any marketing strategy is actually based on the insights and with the huge amount of data. And when we're talking about the data, we're talking about not only talking about the purchase the customer has made, which comes directly from the CRM system, but all of the non-structured data as well, like what the people are saying in social media about my brand, or the sentiment kind of analysis, so all of those which combines together brings a huge amount of data to create any marketing strategy. The analytics and the insight generated out of that data is very important, and that is what has changed in the digital marketing space, which is more of a data-driven strategy for the marketing than the pure the strategy of like pure push kind of marketing. So it is, and you will see a lot of the customized, very personalized one. So because of the availability of data for a specific customer across the different channels, across the different interaction that customer is having, you will see the lot of the push and the notifications really very personalized from the different companies. So that is the key change that has happened because of the availability of huge amount of data, the processing power that cloud has brought in to really make the very personalized marketing for a specific brand or the company. So that's what I see as the major one.
Okay. Huge data, yeah, absolutely. Indu and Neelam, I wanted to ask you, how do you how do you start when you tell a customer who's trying to decide to go on cloud, how much to go on cloud, what to put on cloud, etc., etc.? How do you plan for that customer?
So, Sujit, we have, for example, Neelam talked about it briefly. There is a very extensive, at Capgemini, we have something called as EAPM, which is an assessment tool where your complete landscape can be looked at. And based on that, you will come out with the insights of what makes sense. So basically, which application can be hosted in the same environment or move to AWS or Azure or GCP. Not only that, it gives a framework and a roadmap for doing the migration itself, right? So how do you migrate and move to cloud? Because one is to give an assessment and a report, but also to provide a roadmap on moving to cloud. And this can be further accelerated through a cloud migration factory, right? Where you can make this almost as a factory model. You cannot have huge timelines for migrating the workloads to cloud from on-premise, because you're already paying for your on-premise environment and adding on to the cloud costs as well. So it has to be an accelerated migration, and that comes with the cloud migration. And then, these are the two set of operations that you manage. One is the on-premise world and the new cloud world, right? So the entire hybrid operations management is the next aspect. So all those three considerations are taken into the discussion with the customer. And based on their priorities, not just the current landscape, but they might have future priorities in terms of what they would like to do in terms of analytics, IoT, are they going to bring in blockchain, and so on and so forth. So based on those architecture decisions are made, and there is what we call a center of excellence, which is with the customer, where all of these decisions are made as to how do you move towards cloud, how quickly do you move towards cloud, and commit to the benefits that cloud can get for a customer.
Okay. Raj, there are certain things that you decided you're not going to move to the cloud. Are there some things that you are going to keep in-house on-premise? Raj?
Well, I would put it this way that, see, every decision is a decision in that point of time. And when we make decision today, and of course, as I said, it's a portfolio approach, because different companies, they themselves decide that how they want to do, and they have their own IT, plans, their budgets, their market competitive positioning, and so on and so forth. So in my view, actually, it's eventually, when we look at it, I see things moving to cloud eventually. But when that eventually is, it will take over a period of time. So what do I do today? So what do I do today? I will actually see that when I set up my cloud goals, first thing is that it's very much important to understand what do I expect to get from that. So one is, of course, the sort of an economics over 5 years. See, for example, when BITS Pilani moved to cloud with Oracle, it was not an easy decision. There were licensing, considerations. There were infrastructure, sunken cost considerations. So we made a 5-year plan, a 5-year TCO. Then it looks sensible, right? Otherwise, if you look at 1 year, you don't find it to be sensible. So you have to have that plan over a horizon. So that's one part which puts your economics in place, because what's going to be your recurring investment and so on and so forth, at what time this investment. So that's one part of it. So that's a cost equation. The second equation is in terms of, what do I want to achieve in terms of fast product launches, in terms of, there have been use cases, in terms of ability to collaborate across geographies, ability to collaborate from locations, reach to the consumer, do the consumer want to achieve? So there will be different use cases for different situations. And accordingly, one will prioritize based on what benefit one wants to have. And then it's, of course, the factor is that we want to start something in cloud, or you want to migrate something to cloud. So I think all of these considerations do play. It's never a simple equation, as they say, which is there. And but what thing which are, okay, let me put this way, what thing are less, I would say affinity, they have a lesser affinity to cloud. If there are regulatory concerns on data and you don't find much business or economic benefit, you would certainly like to put it a little behind, because today the regulation may not be in favor of it. Tomorrow it may be in favor, it changes, but then you will prioritize accordingly. So you will prioritize where you can get, your economics will run over a period of time, but you will prioritize where you get the best benefit today, which is there, or, and I think accordingly we'll make the equation. That's the way I would like to put it.
Okay. So BITS Pilani is totally on the cloud now, is it?
No, BITS Pilani moved its ERP to cloud. Of course, there's a large part of it. So you can say a large part of it is already there, but they moved the ERP to cloud. their entire student management system and so on and so forth. With Oracle, they moved to cloud. Now, of course, they evaluated other providers, but with Oracle being there in database and so on, it was already there, ERP licenses. It made sense for them to move to Oracle Cloud. And of course, they gave a great deal to them.
Which project of yours has been the most successful in the cloud project of yours, which you feel has been the most successful?
I think we, as an organization, we have been running. See, I think, for example, the whole Aditya Birla Corporation, the main organization which we have, management company, is on cloud. So it's all, multiple applications which has been there. But if you ask my, satisfaction in terms, because it's a journey, I will not say, there is one different. As I said, mining moved to ERP. They had savings. Swiss Singapore moved. Chemical businesses moved, domestic textiles moved their entire ERP to cloud, and manufacturing companies, actually ERP is the largest piece of manufacturing companies. So they're moving to cloud, is already 80% there. And then there are rest is around applications. So other companies are already there. But if you ask my really, something which I'll remember is when we moved 30,000 people to, make collaboration soon after the pandemic, is something I'll forever remember, which is there. And also 30,000 people at that time, Teams platform and O365, and 40,000 people in 2 weeks on the O365 platform in December. I think this is something one will always remember. How we
Okay. And it was very easy to move, is it?
Things are never easy.
Okay.
To do. There are multiple companies, the mailboxes and so on and so forth, and you move them and suddenly you find names are not there. So there are a lot of things, but I think it was, there was always a change issue, but I think in 1 month it got stabilized.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Shilpa?
Can new businesses, new age digital companies, startups base their entire business strategy on cloud without having a backup plan? Have we reached that kind of dependability on the cloud? Maybe Neelam first to you, then to Indu.
So there are some companies, actually their business model itself is, it runs on the cloud. So of course, you have to build the resilience for cloud, and that's where the multi-cloud also comes into picture. But there are companies who are actually running the entire operations on the cloud. So imagine a startup where they need to start a business, and the amount of then procuring the hardware, place to really keep it, invest in the maintenance, upfront cost they need to really put in. Instead of that, they're really adopting cloud and then just focusing more on the business plan than all of these peripheral things. So it gives the edge and the time to market for these companies if they do it, especially the startup. So otherwise, it's a huge investment for them to really build all of that, which actually losing the time to go to the market. So yes, there are many companies who are actually running their business entirely on the cloud. But again, how you choose what services, how do you build the resilience on the cloud itself, that's important.
I guess those cloud providers themselves will offer various backup options and all that, no?
Correct. Those are there. Like, how do you select the regions? How do you really select what will stay? What services will be used? How you really plan for the backup and the automation of all of that? How do you prevent the failures? So a lot of monitoring aspects, lot of those things will come into picture. Selecting the cloud, adopting the cloud, but how you run and manage it becomes more important to be successful.
Okay. Indu, did you want to say it?
I think startups and cloud, they are a heady mix, because I think it's also about how culturally they are aligned, very well aligned together, right? Because they are both on fail fast, right? So you can afford to make a mistake and not pay a heavy price for it, and then revert it very quickly and then do something new. And that's one of the primary reasons why startups are very inclined towards first going on to leveraging the cloud features and coming up with an innovative product very quickly, right? And the go-to-market and agility, of course, is very important. The second aspect is it allows you to focus on your core competency and invest on the core competency rather than distributing your investments in all of these peripherals of managing the IT infrastructure and so on. So that's another area where startups are very inclined towards selecting a cloud provider and moving ahead with their approach. But we have also seen scenarios wherein once they have reached a particular maturity, then they have looked at diversifying their portfolio from a cloud perspective, selecting multi-cloud, or even going ahead and investing on-premise. So it depends on which stage you are in terms of startup. But in the beginning, I think cloud and startups make a very good combination.
Okay. Things like AI, I mean, we of course discussed AI briefly, but AI, edge computing, IoT, 5G, I mean, these become a lot more, I mean, you can do a lot more with cloud and these technologies, is it? If you have cloud, I mean, these technologies on top of cloud is far more effective than from traditional infrastructure, I guess, right?
Of course, because actually we would not have been able to do the processing at the fast pace in the traditional one. So the scale it needs actually, and at the real time, it wouldn't have been possible, especially on the running the AI algorithm. So the cloud has actually given a big boost to adopting the IoT. And because if you look at the data that it generates, like maybe the 25 GB of data on the fully automated car. So like millions of data per second it is generating. So
would not have been possible.
Yeah.
Okay. Raj, your factories and all that, are they using IoT, edge computing and things?
Yes, so I think many of our, we have a mix of plants. We have around more than 150 plants globally. And many of the plants were built in the 60s, somewhere in the 80s and 90s and so on and so forth across businesses. Because we run, just to recap again, we are a big player in cement, Ultratech Cement, Hindalco Industries, aluminum and copper. We have mining businesses. We have, apart from that, carbon business, which is there, carbon black, pulp and fiber and textiles and so on and so forth. So I think it's a long list. And considering the history, so different plants are at different stages. We have some plants, for example, our Nagda factories, which are like very automated in this space. So they already have a lot of uses of sensors and IoT. Older plants have a challenge because the equipments can't be changed so easily. So I think different companies are at different stages. Some are really benefiting, but every company has a plan around it on what it can do, and that's what they do. That's what which is there. So
and these are together with cloud. All these come together with cloud, is it? The sensors that you use and all that?
No, that's not the case everywhere, because in manufacturing, in the shop floor technology area, the cloud has yet to pick up that space as it should, which is there. It's, there are IoT gateways because there are security considerations are very high in OT. For example, let me put it this way. Again, security is a very favorite subject of mine. That's 50% of what I do. Is it can really operationally impact an organization and make some people not work or hundreds of people work. But if it's an impact on the factory, the costs are enormous. Your shop floor, your factory stopping is unimaginable cost. So we have to be very, very, very careful there. So there, the cloud offtake is yet to be there globally. It's not just with us or India. It is still picking up. It's not there yet. It will take a while to mature cloud users there. But there are a lot of OT, tools and OT, practices which are there. They use cloud, but then the architecture is very different, which is there.
Yeah. Okay. Indu, did you want to add something to that, or?
I think, yeah, this is a very evolving, of course, the analytics part and the whole processing part is very evident, and that's where cloud can support. There is emergence of edge computing, I think more in the Western world, and it will also very quickly get adopted in India as well. So edge computing is what will enable collecting all of this IoT information and then processing it at a local level and then at the cloud level. So that will accelerate the entire analytics, and our true power of IoT will be enabled. And I'm sure it will come up with a lot of business models thereafter, right from after sales of cars and giving notifications of services. There are multiple use cases which are already there in the industry, and it's just a matter of time that it gets executed here in India as well.
Okay. Shilpa, I have this question on again on what Raj said, his favorite subject, and 50% of his time is spent on that. I don't know if you want to add anything more to this question. It's from Dr. Preeti Mishra Joshi. She's asking, as physical control on data is lost with cloud, it raises a very strong security concern. How are cloud enterprises dealing with it? Please discuss about cost factors as well for baseline security or advanced security solutions. Raj, you want to tell us how much are you spending on security? You said 50% of your time is spent on security.
Yeah, well, actually, especially in recent times, it was not designed to be, but it has become in recent times, which is there. So we had, see, considering the cyber threats today, it is a very important topic. We have, our budgets have extensively increased in security area. And recently we signed up a big deal with CrowdStrike, which is an EDR solutions provider company, which is there. And so on and so forth. The traditional antiviruses no longer work because they work on signature patterns or at best on AI/ML based patterns, some of them. But I think EDR so let me just quickly tell what the difference lies is. In AV, you have a malware coming in, it looks at the signature. If the signature is matching, it catches and says a virus. If the site behavior changes, you could have some AI/ML capability, but still it is something coming to you, coming to the PC, and then there is a decipheration which is there. But when it comes to EDR, it looks at all the unusual patterns, unusual activity within the computer. So it's like a different thing. It's like not catching the intruder, but any unusual activity within the site. The full frame is event detection and response, which is there. So it's a far more effective way of catching malware with maybe in stealth mode. See, for example, let me just go to some global examples. When the SolarWinds attack happened in the US, and the US departments, large part of it were affected, it went on for months and months and it was not detected because it was low and slow. It was in the stealth mode. You were putting data and so on and so forth, and then one fine morning it caught up. Like Kaseya. Kaseya is a major IT services, is a medium-sized IT services provider there. Their practices were very poor. And in terms of they were storing passwords on database, which was in unencrypted format, outdated application, which were there, middleware and so on and so forth. And this practices impacted 1,500 organizations in the US. So the cloud is a very interesting word. Your errors or mistakes also get amplified in a very big way, which is there because suddenly you will find in a connected enterprise, a lot of people are impacted. So security is a major topic. Coming to the point, we are investing in EDR in a big way. We are doing a network segmentation project is going to start where we are saying, okay, multiple companies traffic, how we can, minimize the because today the traffic can move from one company to other companies, especially in our shared services center. So we have to use network segmentation there. So good amount of money is being spent, and I think that's very worth which is there. And of course, it's a big challenge because there's so many technologies which want to use architecturally and so on and so forth. Yeah.
Okay. Shilpa?
Yeah, we have this question from Ishwar Devnath. As a fan of the content that Applause Entertainment produces, I wanted to understand how cloud is playing a key role for a production house whose core focus is in writing, casting, and filming.
I think so. Of course, these are very. Film is more known by its content and cast and acting and so on and so forth. But there's enormous amount of data which gets generated because it's broadcast data, and so that data has to be stored somewhere. You have to download. You have to work with multiple copies. So there's a huge amount of data. It's the angle of data being there. That's a very important part. And I think that's where and of course they use a lot of software. Which uses but the data is in the cloud. I think that's where the important part is. Huge amount of data.
Okay. Neelam, into sustainability and climate goals, they are becoming a big part of business decisions now. How can cloud help in this?
Traditionally, if you see, the cloud it's being looked at for the cost as well as the agility. Now the sustainability angle has become a new imperative to drive actually the cloud adoption. So if you look from the data, the large companies can actually reduce the carbon footprint by almost 30% if they move to cloud. So when we are talking about the sustainability angle, we are talking about multiple multiple areas of cloud adoption and multiple areas of IT. One is the infrastructure. Infrastructure, when you move, right, because it is just the way that cloud is actually designed to the multi-tenant and the shared environment, the way that all of the data center management practices in terms of the cooling and the energy efficiency, lot of the data centers are now actually adopting the green energy. So like even the power being used, how much of the renewable energy is being used, which is much more efficient than the traditional data center. So this all combined together, if we look at the carbon footprint of the on-prem versus cloud, this is definitely the reduced carbon footprint because of these reasons. But the true success will come is it doesn't stop there itself. It has to be really the much more efficient way of whether it is even the cooling, the water used for cooling in the data center. Is it actually being recycled? The hardware and the servers, once they reach the end of life, how it is actually being recycled, reused, whether it is going into e-waste. So a lot of those things come into picture, but it actually forms the huge chunk of the global carbon emission. And if that is addressed within the data center and the cloud data center, which collectively it will make a big impact. So that is one part of it. But there are multiple areas where we are looking at it, is whether even the coding practices to use. So a lot of those terms are actually being coined, but yes, cloud is definitely being looked at one of the levers to reduce the carbon footprint. The EAPM as a solution that Indu talked about. In fact, we have recently introduced a feature when we are doing the cloud strategy and the cloud assessment, because before moving to the cloud, we do the assessment of the entire landscape, that okay, this much would be saved in terms of the cost, like kind of build the business case. Along with that, the new feature has been built in. Okay, if you migrate this much workload to cloud, and this much carbon footprint saving that you will have with this move. So that is how the things are moving, and a lot of the decisions and customers are making based on not only in the cloud on the cost and the resiliency aspect of it, but also the climate aspect.
There's a clear advantage you're saying in terms of carbon emissions and all that in moving from an on-premise system to a cloud system, is it?
Yeah, absolutely. And particularly when the public cloud providers are actually investing heavily, making their infrastructure and data center green versus the on.
Okay. Indu, you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, so just to add to what Neelam shared, at the end of the day, all of these hyperscaler providers, AWS, Azure, Microsoft, they have huge data centers, right? And so there are two inherent advantages that come out of it. They definitely are focusing on sustainability and green data centers. So that's a given. Using renewable energy sources, that's another given. But I think what's also interesting is, to some extent, a lot of consolidation of the on-premise data centers is now happening into the cloud data center. So that gives you certainly an advantage from an overall carbon emission and sustainability perspective. And a lot of these data centers are housed using, let's say, in Norway, using the tidal waves. That's the energy that is being consumed. It's completely eco-friendly. A lot of data centers you would visit have zero carbon footprint. That's the kind of target that they are getting into. So it's an interesting space. And this is an area where the more you do, you still have a long way to go. But definitely cloud is one of the enablers for sustainability.
Okay. Raj, are you monitoring these metrics?
Yes, we have a group sustainability function, which looks at monitoring the sustainability initiatives of various companies and so on and so forth. So that's what it is there. And all of our CIOs and IT companies, IT leadership that looks at it. So I think I will have one more, angle to it on just adding up to what Neelam and Indu was saying. See, like any change management, we are at a, what you call a historic transformation today, which is happening because of maybe the crisis, the pandemic has accelerated that, but change to AI-driven world, change to a digital world is a historic transformation in every way if you look at which is there. And like any large transformation, I look at it as a combination of art and science, which is there. So I look at cloud, AI, cybersecurity, all these are part of the continuum, I would say that, and that's a way to go. That's the way future will be. Climate change is like one of the biggest opportunities and challenges of a generation, which is there. And it's been really, the IPCC report was there day 4, which very clearly spells out in detail what the threat we face. And when we look at climate models, or, let's say there was an article I was reading in Bloomberg on the cost of carbon, which is there, and so on and so forth. So all that costing and modeling which happens uses enormous amount of data. And let us face it, the enormous amount of data can only be resolved and processed in cloud. There's no other way. It's simple as that. I think we are still, somebody says we'll move to cloud. I think it's bound to happen. It's just the way of journey. It's just nothing else. So that kind of data can only be modeled in cloud. So I think that's one part. And even, for example, I was reading, in Puri. The Puri is one of the only cities in the India, possibly, which has, it supplies drinking water through taps to people. An article came in your
Yeah.
And I read that they were using IoT on what
Okay.
and cloud, which is there. So what's a beautiful example right in our country itself, that a city, that I don't think any other place, at least I don't see around giving water on tap. So for sustainability is so crucial. And Puri, they're using IoT water meters. They're looking at, because it's not the water, which water is fine, but it's a distribution mechanism through pipes, which is there, and the contamination which happens. And they're using cloud and IoT there. So there's a whole linkage which is there. Whenever there's a data, whenever there's information, wherever there's connectivity, there is cloud. That's where I put it.
Wonderful. Yeah, I had read about this Puri thing, but I had not read about this point about IoT and cloud and all that. Amazing. Yeah. Yeah, I guess they will have to use those kind of technologies to those are probably more cost efficient now. Yeah. Amazing. So we are past 7 o'clock now. Indu, Neelam, Raj, final words to you. Indu, Neelam, to your customers, final words. What do you want them to think about cloud?
Think cloud and go for it. I think that's the future. And we are here to enable the cloud journey for our customers.
Neelam?
The acceleration has happened due to pandemic. In like what was supposed to happen in 3 years, where we have seen in actually last 1 year. So we need to just keep that same pace probably, and then take the full advantage.
Okay. Raj, final word to other enterprises in India?
Well, I think as it was recently, very clearly in a study, that if you're not using cloud and AI, 1/3 of the companies actually have, secured almost 2/3 or 3/4 of the profits in the last 1.5 years. So it's very simple. And others, if you are not there, then possibly you may not have a chance to even be in the race tomorrow. I think that's a kind of it's an existential question today. So I think I already enough said in my last statement on cloud. The only thing I will say, just, end on a note that as they say that wherever there's a peace, there is humanity, and there is, compassion, I am there. So wherever there's data, whether there's connectivity, whether there is a user or consumer, cloud has to be there. There's absolutely no choice. You may have a choice of calibrating your journey, but the path is very clear.
Wonderful. Cloud has to be there. Thanks so much. Great discussion, Raj, Indu, Neelam. Wonderful listening to all of you. We learned a lot from Shilpa and me, and from Times Techies. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was a pleasure being here. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you. It was a pleasure being here.